starting too early. But I do know y'all are probably hungry, so it's probably a good thing. I thought they were saying to go.
No. I was ready for you.
Oh,
But they're gonna start.
was that too? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's town hall meeting. My name is Virginia Mata, and I serve as the Director of the Social Justice Ministry for the Archdiocese of San Antonio. It is truly an honor to welcome each of you. Your presence here is a testament to the importance of this conversation, not just as a matter of policy, but as a moral responsibility. Tonight, we gather not just as leaders, not just as members of our church or our archdiocese, but as brothers and sisters united in faith, justice, and shared responsibility. Because the truth is, we all know someone living in fear, afraid to go to work, afraid to send their child to school. We know someone who feels invisible, silenced, and uncertain about the future. But we also know something about our archdiocese and our city. We are compassionate, and tonight we are here to send a clear message to those who feel alone. You are not alone. We see you, we hear you, and we stand with you. We are honored to be joined by our panelists, Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller, San Antonio Mayor Ron Nuremberg, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar, Antonio Fernandez, President and CEO of Catholic Charities, Gloria Urabaso, Vice President for Mission and Ministry at Our Lady of the Lake University, and Clarissa Vega, also from Our Lady of the Lake University. Our moderator for tonight is Father Juan Molina, President of the Mexican American Catholic College, and priests, women, religious, deacons, and their wives, special guests, and members of the media, all of whom play a vital role in shaping the well-being of our archdiocese and its people. At the heart of our gathering is a simple but profound truth. Every human being is created in the image of God, deserving of dignity, respect, and compassion. As we begin this town hall, let us center ourselves in prayer. Please bow your heads. Loving and merciful God, we ask for your presence in this space tonight. Fill our hearts with wisdom and humility as we listen to one another. May this discussion be guided by truth, understanding, and a shared desire for your love. Help us to see one another not as strangers, but as neighbors, to recognize your face in those who are vulnerable, displaced, and in need. Bless our leaders with discernment and courage. Bless our communities with unity and hope. And above all, Lord, may we walk forward together as instruments of your peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we'll begin with our moderator, Father Molina.
going to jump right into some questions to begin the conversation with our panelists this evening. Archbishop, the first question to you. What is the Church's teaching with regards to the care of migrants?
Well, the Catholic social teaching has emphasized constantly that people, they have the right to migrate and to better their lives for themselves and for those that they are taking care of. That could be family members, neighbors, friends. Also, the Catholic Church indicates that the countries they have the right to protect their borders, and emphasizes that all the process has to be with respect, with understanding, and for the better good of the people who are migrating and the common good, the country that is receiving the people. And also the Catholic Church emphasizes that even if people migrate, the processes has to be one that is just and merciful, filled with justice and mercy. And that is a very difficult dance, but otherwise it's not humane and destroys individuals, families, and society. And all based that a human being was created to the image and likeness of God. So basically, this is the center, and the pursuit of the common good is very strongly emphasized. That we need to see each other with the same dignity. So whatever good is done has to be embraced and to be present in all those involved.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I'll follow up with you, Antonio. Could you tell us a little bit about what are the procedures that you have placed at Casa Bienvenida?
So at Cathedral Bienvenida, we actually received hundreds of thousands of people the last 2.5 years. And it was a great work between the Syrian Catholic Church and all of the non-for-profits, ensuring that people who had crossed the border and they were already with ICE or Homeland Security or Border Patrol, those entities will actually send them to non-for-profits and they will come to San Antonio, to Catholic Church. So for us, it was a safety issue when we provide humanitarian services. And all of these people were coming directly from the government so we could serve them. All of them had their A numbers. They were legally in the United States. They had to go and see a judge or go and meet with ICE. And we will help them to ensure that while they were in San Antonio, they were treated with respect and dignity. So more than procedures were common sense, food, clothes, showers, anything that a human being needs. And we will help them to go to the final destination where they were going to go. It could be New York or Chicago, wherever it is. So for us, it was serving people like we would like to be served other places. And again, all of these people were here legally in San Antonio.
Good. Thank you for that. Although I'll get to our other panelists. Archbishop, I know you spent a lot of time at Casa Bienvenida, and I think you even shortened your vacation. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Well, I consider that it was a blessing to be part of those people's lives, and how, in listening to their stories, I was able to learn who they were, why they decided to leave their country of origin, the countries that they went through, to know their basic needs and their longings. The sense of hope in those brothers and sisters was tremendous. And I consider it a great blessing in my life to have been accompanied them. And there were times I was every day to visit 2, 3, 4 hours, listening to stories, seeing other members are in situations like that center that we work with the city as partners, you will think that you need to separate male adults, female adults, children, babies, pregnant women. No, they were as families, and they were able to relate, and we didn't have one incident. And then sometimes, when they were speaking to me, some of them, they showed the frustration. But it was not crossing boundaries. And you will say, how they learned that? When they have lived abused in their country of origin and in the process. You know? And even when they arrive in the United States, they are hoping that will be the country that they saw on TV, that they thought it was, and they find that it's still very complicated. And immigration is complicated. But how to have the sense of the dignity of individuals. I mean, there were babies that were born during their time in the center. And they were accompanied, and sisters with their hospital care units were able to help them. I mean, it's remarkable, all the help that was given. Also, thank you, Antonio, because that experience also shows that we can give the best for those who are vulnerable and they are in dire need. Not just to give them what is left of the little. We did with the city all that we could. And if we're able to do more and we'll have opportunities in the future, we will do more for them.
Thank you, Archbishop. Mayor Nuremberg, first of all, thank you for being here with us. From your perspective, how was the relationship with Casa Bienvenida in the city?
The relationship between the Archdiocese and the city of San Antonio has always been very strong when it comes to challenging human issues. When we find people in need, we work to address the need. That goes for any San Antonio resident. And so let me just back up a minute and describe to you the practical side of all of this. San Antonio, our community, our city, has always followed immigration laws. And we have always been dedicated to the purpose of creating a safe and inclusive community. Those two things do not have to be mutually exclusive. San Antonio, our local government, doesn't have control over immigration law. We know that we have been waiting many decades for reform of our immigration system to match the modern times that we live in. That has not happened. So practically, we don't control who might arrive to San Antonio. We do have a responsibility as a community, as a government, to maintain safety, to provide some order to what can be a chaotic process when you have many thousands of people arriving to the city. And the way we dealt with providing for safety and order is that we opened what many people know as the Minor Resource Center in partnership with Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese as a way of providing safety, not just for people who are arriving, but for the community as well, because we need an orderly process. But I have always maintained that we can do both of those things and live up to our obligation as people to treat everyone, regardless of who's here, everyone in our community deserves to be treated with dignity and with humanity. That is a basic responsibility that we have as citizens of this community. And so our approach with the Migrant Resource Center is to do all three of those things: provide for public safety, maintain order in the process, and treat people with dignity. We are only able to do that because we've had tremendous partnership with our community, starting with Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese, but giving the strength of the city of San Antonio and the resources that we have to bear. I will add, for folks who are always very interested in this, how is it all paid for? It is paid for because the people responsible for what happens with immigration in the this country have taken on that responsibility of paying for it one way or the other. That's why we were reimbursed by the federal government for this service that's been provided because of the fact that we still live with an immigration system that is built in the 1990s, and here we are in 2024. But it has been a seamless process. It has been a dignified process. It's been a safe process, and that's because we have the strength of this community, the compassion of the community, as well as its practicality.
Thank you. I appreciate your 3 points that you mentioned: public safety, welcoming people, and at the same time treating them with respect. Now, moving on to the enforcement part of it, perhaps. Sheriff, again, also thank you for being here with us tonight. Can you share what communications you have had, if any, with the local ICE office regarding immigration enforcement and the possibility of raids?
Well, first off, let me just state that myself and certainly speaking for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, our priorities locally, our priorities as far as law enforcement go, are different than the priorities of the new administration coming into the federal government. I don't believe that immigration should be a top priority for us. Enforcement of law is, absolutely, right? If somebody breaks the law, then they're going to be held accountable and go to jail just like anybody else, whether documented or undocumented. However, our authorities as local authorities are limited as far as immigration enforcement, and I'm glad for that. I'm glad that there's a separation there. And with that being said, I haven't had much communications with our local ICE office. I believe I have a meeting with them later this week. I don't believe there's going to be anything significant discussed, and certainly if and when it is discussed, anything is discussed with me, I'll share that publicly. What I am going to share today is some communications that I was privy to in D.C. I was just recently in Washington, D.C. For a couple of sheriff's conferences, Major County Sheriffs of America and the National Sheriff's Association. As part of those two conferences, I had the opportunity to communicate with high-level federal law enforcement officials. And again, while I don't agree necessarily with their rules of engagement, I do have a better understanding of what it is that their rules of engagement are. And so, again, I'm not here to deliver a message necessarily, but information was shared with me. I'm bringing it back to my community and sharing it in hopes of calming people down as far as what my understanding is of their enforcement priorities. Now, first and foremost, from what I've been told, and I have no reason to doubt these folks just yet, right? They haven't lied to me just yet, as far as I can tell. My understanding is that they do not intend to go into schools, churches, and hospitals indiscriminately. In other words, it's not going to be door to door, hospital to hospital, church to church, school to school, looking to see who's documented or undocumented. What they've shared with us as local law enforcement is that they are going to be conducting targeted enforcement. They're going to be going after a certain person. So if that certain person with a warrant for their arrest or what have you works in a church or school, then yes, they may go into that church or school looking for that one person. But unfortunately, and what I didn't like necessarily hearing is that anybody that may be next to that person at the time of arrest or contact may be subject to seizure and possible deportation if they happen to be undocumented and are committing no other violations of the law. One of the other things that I was comforted in is that they made mention of the fact, they specifically made mention of the fact that DACA recipients, those protected by DACA, are not a priority as far as removal. They're not looking at present, they're not looking to remove those protections, and they're not looking to make targets of those folks, obviously unless they have a warrant for their arrest for something else.
That's a pretty good answer because it takes me to my next question for Gloria. Gloria, can you say anything about the general anxiety feeling in campuses, and especially with DACA recipients?
Well, I'd like to talk in terms of, this is what I'm hearing from some of our students. I'm hearing that there is a climate of fear. There's a climate of dehumanization. That there's a climate of stripping away one's own identity, which in the past has been an identity filled with pride, but now has been replaced with fear. And then concern over birthright, citizenships, having to leave a country I've known since birth, and then the fear of going somewhere that I know nothing about. The impact is not just on individual students that have family members that have been sent back. It's their friends. The impact goes further than their direct families that are involved, but their friends at school and what it does for them. Where is that safety? Where is that safety now? And law enforcement, I'm sitting right next to one here, they've always been looked at in the past as protectors and as people that students can go to if they're needing help. And now they're afraid. Students' realities that they can go to class and to do the classwork and to do the homework, but now they may not finish. They just might not graduate. What about form filling? The fear of identifying oneself as a Latinx or Hispanic and the fear of retaliation. Unable to respond to forms without the fear of racial profiling. Those are just some of the conversations I've had with students that have so the framework is that of fear. And it would be with the DACA as well.
I believe the sheriff may have.
Sure, I'm glad you mentioned law enforcement, because a lot of those points are things that I wanted to come here and touch on specifically. First and foremost, racial profiling, still illegal. It's absolutely still illegal, and if anybody suspects a first responder of conducting racial profiling, my office needs to be the first one to be called. We'll sort it out, whichever agency is responsible for it, but certainly you can call my office, and again, I bet my next year's worth of pay the chief, although I don't speak for Chief McManus anymore. I used to be a spokesperson, I'm not, not anymore, but I'd bet my next year's worth of paychecks that his comments would be along the same lines, is that racial profiling is still something that is illegal as far as law enforcement goes. With that being said, earlier I alluded to the fact that my priorities and local law enforcement priorities are different than those of the current administration incoming. I can tell you definitively that we would rather have good relations with everybody in our community. We would rather have everybody in our community feel equally protected, whether documented or undocumented. So with that being said, and I can't state this any more emphatically than I'm about to, if you are the victim of a crime, or if you are a witness to a crime, and you happen to be undocumented, please, I need you to feel comfortable calling law enforcement and making that report. You will be treated as the victim or the witness that you are, along with all the rights and privileges afforded to victims and witnesses. In other words, there are laws still on the books that do protect the rights of crime victims. And in fact, my deputies, my investigators are well versed on how to fill out things like U-Visa applications to allow a victim to feel comfortable making that report and enjoy the protections afforded them under the law. Much like the folks in the Martha's Vineyard investigation, everybody's familiar with what happened there. Those folks are still in this country, legally, lawfully, working legally and lawfully because of the U-Visas that we provided them as part of that ongoing investigation. So please, if you are a victim or a witness, call us, 210-335-6000. That's the number of the Sheriff's Office.
Good, thank you. That's important to know. And I'll follow up with a few questions there, but I think the Archbishop may have a point.
Well, I was also thinking of when you were speaking, Gloria, that is also the cloud that to have crossed the border makes you illegal. When we have experience of those who work with Casa Bienvenida, and that they are criminals, and even they can end in terrorists. So the victimization, the criminalization is something that weighs a lot in people's lives, because then it brings insecurity. And as both of you talk about security and protection, how we're going to convey, besides what we're saying here, in our environments, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our churches, in our structures, to convey start with. And how to build up from there, even though this cloud that says, you are bad, and we want to clean you out of here. Because that builds a lot of elements that they don't work to build what you convey and receive. And it's true, I have seen it in 14 years. What you convey, Mayor, is right. But we want to keep that, we will need to work at it and together. And that's one of the purposes of this encounter.
Sure. So that's the work of the church in a sense, making sure that everyone's human dignity is respected. But I want to go back a little bit to just for some more details, both for the mayor and for the sheriffs. Mayor Nierenberg, has the city been in communication with ICE or members of the current administration to address the deportation efforts we are seeing across our country?
Yes. In fact, I had a meeting with the ICE field director a couple of weeks ago, and I'll convey the same information that the sheriff just mentioned. What we were told is that the deportation activities that are being conducted right now by ICE is really no different than has been conducted under any other administration, going back to Obama, to Biden, to Trump 1, now Trump 2. What is happening that is different is the rhetoric, is the attention, is the showmanship of some of these things from politicians. And it is designed to do exactly what we're hearing, which is that it's instilling a lot of fear. It's concerning to many people in the community, and it's even stoking hatred. That is what it is designed to do by politicians who are playing those kinds of games. The reality, though, is that, number one, our laws have not changed. You know how hard it is to change immigration law. We've been trying. And our values have not changed. And that's the part that I think we need to really emphasize tonight, is that our values as a community here in San Antonio have not changed. We look out for public safety for the entire community. We provide services and people who are in need. If there is someone hungry in our community, we're going to do the best that we can to feed that person. Now, how do we respond to the fear, though? I think, that's why the Archbishop called us together. That's why the sheriff has said what he said. And that's why also, through our immigration office and through many nonprofits, all of you which are probably engaged in, is making sure that people know what the facts are, what's actually happening on the ground, and the fact that between December and January, people did not all of a sudden lose their constitutional rights to due process. There are resources out there. We want to make sure that you have those resources, you know your rights, and you can live without fear in our community.
And a little bit related to that, thank you for your answer. Sheriff, how closely, if anything, is your office working with ICE when it comes to enforcement?
Well, we're always going to follow the law. Whatever's required of me by law, we will do it, right? I don't have the ability to say, well, we're going to ignore that law. So whatever's required of us by law, but with that being said, nothing more than that. Perfect example. Okay, right now in the state of Texas, several of the major counties, which we are considered, several of the major counties, for example, have ICE. ICE has an office in the jail. They're housed there. That not being required by law, ICE does not have an office in my jail. They can come and go as they need to, right? I don't have the ability to keep them out. But so, like for example, they come through the facility. They used to come through once or twice a day. Now my understanding is that those visits are about every 3 to 4 hours. They're coming through, interviewing prisoners there in the jail, and then they're collecting information from individual prisoners or inmates, if you will, going back to their office, and then there they generate immigration detainers that they then send over to my jail for who they would like to speak to upon release from the jail. So my relationship with ICE is only that with, it only goes as far as what I am legally obligated to do and nothing more.
Thank you.
And may I just add to that? I can't emphasize enough what the the sheriff said first, which is that we're still observing the law, we're following the law. You can be a community that cares for people and is dignified in that approach and treats people with humanity and follow the law. That's what San Antonio has done from time immemorial, and that's what we will continue to do.
I do have a couple of follow-up questions on that, but I would like to ask Gloria, actually. Can you tell us a little bit more about how DACA recipients have been faring and what they are telling you? And maybe discuss a little bit, if you can, this issue of birthright citizenship that you have mentioned earlier on.
I think I've talked to a couple of students who are DACA students, and then have worked with nonprofit organizations. And one of the comments that have been made has been, because I want you to hear the voice of the student, not my voice. I'm not here for me. I am here for me, but I'm not here for me. It's for me to advocate for students. Having to leave a country that I have known since birth and going somewhere that I know nothing about. This is home. I want to finish my education. I want to have a better life, not only for me, but for others who will come after me. And so, before there was hope, and now for a DACA student, as you said, you gave new information. It's about information, because the DACA students are afraid and they're uncertain. But the information has to be sent, it has to be given, it has to be sent to many, many people because of all the rhetoric that is going on in our world today. So, one simple question that some of our and international students will ask is, can I travel back home and come back? Will I be allowed to come back? And you know what? Do we know? Do we know that response?
Thank you. I think that's important to hear from those affected. Archbishop.
Yes, I think this topic about education and information has to be always present in this process that we are in, because by design, as the mayor said, the system has provoked a chaotic situation. And so it's hard to know if the information is right, if they are going to find any mistake in me, I cannot walk this way or that way, because then will get me, or they can get somebody else next to me. So we will have to continue doing that, and the church, not only the Catholic Church, I know of other religious groups who are working hard in providing attention to migrants and refugees as brothers and sisters, as the city wants to treat everybody. But so the information is important, to know that by design is a chaotic picture, how we in leadership, how we're going to convey good direction. Before we came here, the sheriff said something. He says, we hope that the people who are here and those who are going to follow this program through the media, that they will be part of solution. Because we don't know, we should not wait, the solution will come from the top. When we saw that rhetoric that we heard, but how has to come from the base. And so there are many people who are very interested in help with this. We have Catholic Charities. It's a question also for Catholic Charities. What that institution will be able to do for other people. And I believe, because in dialogues that we have had, that we are not going to stop doing good. And for anyone, anytime, and anywhere, you'd like to say something more, Antonio?
So, the question is, we closed Centro y Avenida MRC last week, officially closed. We other side called Mother Teresa Center, a place where we want to help the people who are here in San Antonio, English classes, education classes, workforce development, how to help moms and dads raise their kids in a school. How do we help people with basic knowledge? And I mean everybody. People who were here, people who actually are born in other cities, because at the end of the day we serve all. And clearly we serve all. So for us, is how do we help the people who are coming to us, but even the people who are afraid to come because they are afraid. And I think the big issue right now is how do we educate the community in what is going on and what my rights are or not. So we're doing more Ask a Lawyers in parishes and community sites so we can tell people what the rights are. We're putting things on social media so people can actually understand that. So at the end of the day, we're not going to stop here. I think it's my obligation to feed a child. I think all of us will feed a child when the child is hungry. I think we'll clothe the person. We have blankets. We have toys. Whatever we can, we have to do to our foreigner, to our neighbor. That's our responsibility, and we plan to do that and keep going stronger than ever.
So the basic point is that the Catholic Church, we as Catholic Christians, are not going to stop caring for those in need in one way or another. I'll follow up a little bit about that, but Archbishop, you were going to say something.
Well, how we are going to meet the needs when, as the mayor said towards the beginning, that all these programs are well funded by the federal government. Because it's the responsibility of the federal government and the state or states to provide the solution for these situations. Now, if we don't have the funds, we know that the help cannot be the same. But it could be, we have to give it thought and to be creative and to find ways how, in our ability, not only the Catholic Church, in our ability, with our gifts, we can continue providing services for these people. Because, I mean, in the center of Bienvenida, in 3 months, close to 3 months, we were able to help together 353,000 individuals. How we're going to be able to replicate the help without the funds?
Right, so that's the major issue. You started saying something about that. Do you have any other comments or points to make about that? How will the church continue to care for those in need? And that is the call of Jesus, basically.
It's our moral obligation as human beings to give back to the people in need. So, do we have the funding that we had before? No, we do not have that funding. So we are asking the community for volunteers. We're asking the community to help us support everybody and just pass the word that there is a place where people can feel safe. Because, for us, the Catholic Church, our blessing or the curse is that people feel safe with the church. And then the church calls Catholic Church, and that's our job. And for us, we work with the armed forces, we work with the county, with the city. But at the end of the day, my job in life is to ensure that everybody can eat. That everybody, a homeless person in San Antonio, a child, a senior person can eat, regardless if they're foreigners or not. Because I think all of us would want to do that for our own family, all of us. So we are planning to provide more services for the people who stay here. So over 350,000 people around that past the Centro Bienvenida, maybe over $500,000 through San Antonio. We know that 5 to 10% of those people stay in San Antonio. How are we helping them? Because now they're our neighbors. They are in our communities, in our churches, in our county, in our city. We have an obligation to help them. And we will be helping them, hopefully teaching them how to fish, so they can become self-sufficient, the sooner the better.
So your comments remind me of Matthew 25. We're going to do it because it's the call of Jesus, because it's in the gospel. Whatever you did for the least of this, you did it for me. Obviously, the issue is about funding. We're not going to be able to help in the same level But it's not just the church. Also, it seems like federal agencies or counties and cities are also suffering some of that as well. So this question is for either of you, Sheriff or Mayor. How are you dealing with the decreased funding from federal agencies? And how that relates really to public safety in the city and in the county?
Well, so for now, our federal funding has not changed. My understanding is there is some proposed legislation up that unless we, as law enforcement agencies, do the bidding of the federal government, for lack of a better term, right? Unless we do the bidding of the federal government or apply to do the bidding of the federal government, our federal funding to conduct law enforcement operations may be affected. And so one of the ones that I've seen, so at present, and I'm glad that it's this way, but at present, my authorities as a local law enforcement officer, I actually do not have the authority to detain somebody or arrest somebody solely for immigration. So in other words, if I walk up to a person on the street and they are committing no crime at all, if that person tells me I'm undocumented, I'm in the country illegally, I, as a local authority, do not have the authority to detain that person solely for that. There's a law in the books, a program called 287G, that if a local authority goes through the training, they then become certified then they can make that arrest if they go through that 287G. Right now, I don't have any deputies in my agency that are certified under 287G. However, there is a proposed bill working its way. I believe there's a federal side, there's one on the federal side and one on the state side that say essentially the same thing, that all law enforcement agencies will have to apply for that 287G, or else if we don't even apply for it, we won't receive grant funding anymore. I hope that it doesn't pass. Unfortunately, I think that there's some momentum, and certainly the way the legislatures are looking, not to get too political into it, but the way both legislatures are looking in Austin and in DC, I believe that they do stand a chance of passing.
I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Sure. Well, again, with respect to how we have handled the process and the impacts of increasing numbers of people, migrants coming to our community, which I need to also emphasize what the Archbishop said, the people who have arrived to our city through the Migrant Resource Center are here through legal channels. So they're here because of the laws that we have, not in spite of them. With respect to that process and the Migrant Resource Center and the expenses that we've had for that center, the number of people who have been arriving have steadily declined since last summer. And so to the point where we only had a dozen or so folks over there, we have closed it down because it was it was not needed at that level of service, and it was a lot of expense for an empty facility. But should migration rise, ebb and flow like it has over the last 20 years as our laws have changed and stayed the same, it's not good. The lack of funding doesn't all of a sudden make the need go away. So our community, again, will have to ask itself, if the federal government is no longer providing the funding for a problem that they have created, what should the community of San Antonio do to live up to our obligations of public safety, maintaining order, and treating people with dignity? What we have done in those instances is we've relied on each other. We've worked together as nonprofit community, as churches, as a city, and we will have to figure it out. But at this moment in time, the level of need, the level of resources to fill the need is not at the intensity of what once was, even just a few months ago. I will also share express the same of what Sheriff said in terms of our federal funding overall. There's been a lot of rhetoric about freezing of federal funds, and this goes beyond immigration. I don't want to get too far off the immigration issue. We've heard a lot of that, but I go back to what I said before. Separate the rhetoric from what's actually happening. Rhetoric does not change laws. You need Congress to change laws. Congress has been very slow to change laws, so until we are told that the laws have changed and the federal funding, which Congress constitutionally appropriates to us, changes, the funding money is still coming to us. There is something called anticipatory obedience that we want to avoid, because the rhetoric and the fear is getting people to do things that the law doesn't actually require us to do. And we want to make sure that we continue to provide the services that are necessary for our entire community, make sure that we're keeping our community safe, and then again, live up to our values of treating each other with dignity.
Archbishop.
And I would like to add a comment on what you were saying, Mayor. What San Antonians were going to do, knowing that the funding is not there, that the strong rhetoric, and even though we need to look at facts and what the Congress will do about laws. And I know many people who, as individuals, they were working in helping the community who is in fear. So we don't have to wait only how to organize the structures, but individuals, they can go and help a neighbor, another person, and to help them, to build up in that person the sense of pride and dignity and service, and to let that fear kind of lower the level a little bit and live. And implies sometimes to help also with material needs and funds. But if everyone would work as being responsible in our society, we take the opportunity of structures, but also as individuals. We can do a lot of good in the conversation, daily conversation with particular individual or different people can change some patterns. Because people, I'm thinking about these 350,000, wherever they are at, if they cannot go to the hearing to keep the legal system as they started, and we help them, what will happen to them? So our hope is that somebody else will encounter them, and through that culture of encounter, help them to navigate, because otherwise how they do it? And we're talking a baby, a teenager, a young adult, a couple, a single mother, a single father, a single parent. Yeah. We are also, and I share that with you in this panel, we also are having our struggles, us who are in leadership, regarding that we have many people helping communities who are not born in the United States. Ministers in different faiths, priests, sisters, who are in charge of communities, schools, they are teaching. And they are also in that dynamic of fear, and that I just today I had a meeting with someone that says this particular priest went home and kind of returned. When he was coming back, he was told, no, you cannot enter the country. And there was no any crime or anything like that. But, so the fear is real on different levels. Those who came for help and those who are helping, also they are entering that dynamic. And we're going to have to do decisions. We don't want to be against the law, but we are in that dilemma. How to continue serving the communities when those who are in leadership, they were not born here, or in different kind of visas, and at one point they have to return home, and maybe will never return to continue being the working force here.
Your comments just make me think that obviously we will need to continue to work for comprehensive immigration reform, because that is the real solution to what we're facing at this point with this particular issue. But Sheriff, I would like, if you can, could you elaborate more a little bit about public safety, especially with regards to the chaos and not knowing and who knows, who doesn't know, the fear that people have. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Again, I'll reiterate. I'll say it in Spanish if you
You're
care
welcome
to, because I know that some of the Catholic realidad como autoridades locales es diferente que las prioridades, son diferentes las prioridades que los del el gobierno federal, especialmente ahorita. Nuestras autoridades están limitadas como autoridades, como oficiales locales. Nuestras autoridades están limitadas con inmigración, en inmigración. Si una persona en mi comunidad o en cualquier comunidad es una persona indocumentada y si son víctimas o testigos a un delito, yo quiero que se sientan confortables hablándonos a nosotros y dándonos esa queja. Si son víctimas o si son testigos a un delito, aunque sean indocumentados, quiero que se sientan confortables porque nosotros vamos a manejar esa situación, vamos a tratar a esa persona como víctima o como testigo con todos los derechos que uno tiene como víctima o testigo. Hay leyes ahorita, leyes federales que los protegen bajo la ley. Si alguien es una víctima, nosotros podemos llenar unas formas y ya mandar esos y durante esa investigación esa persona se puede quedar en el país legalmente y es más, hay también proceso para que los dejen trabajar legalmente mientras que estén aquí y por eso con toda confianza queremos que se sientan confortables hablándonos a nosotros, a mi agencia, el departamento del sheriff del condado Oveja, 210-335-6000. Ese es el número de no emergencia y se puede llamar 24 horas al día si alguien nos necesita.
Gracias. Although you said it in Spanish, what I take away from it is that you are very concerned about public safety, and that involves both communities that are Spanish-speaking, English-speaking, really any other language that is spoken in the county.
Absolutely. We want to protect everybody in this community, whether documented or undocumented. If you are a victim or a witness to a crime, call us and we will help you.
Thank you very much. Now, following up a little bit, these are some of the last questions that I have. I'll stay with you for a moment just because I'm sure that some people are asking these things as well. Has ICE asked you or required your office or other law enforcement authorities that you're aware of to detain any persons your officers may engage in that they may be undocumented?
ICE has not asked us to conduct any raids with them, to assist in any raids with them. Last week, as a matter of fact, there was a man being processed through the satellite office here at the courthouse, and ICE, I'm getting this information second, third hand by the time it gets to me, but what I was told, ICE actually made a verbal request by phone, is, oh, can you hang on to that guy for us because we want to prepare a detainer for him? And my chief's answer was, no, we can't just detain him until we get that detainer. So if you want to send us a detainer in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, okay, we'll abide by that detainer. But as far as just grabbing onto this guy because somebody said so on the phone, that is not going to occur. So again, I'm glad that ICE has not asked to participate in any raids. And what's more, we actually locally have not seen any of the widespread raids that have made their rounds on social media. That's another one of the myths that I was hoping to dispel here. Is we just haven't seen it here locally.
Can you explain a little bit, Archbishop, I'll get to you, but can you explain a little bit more the targeted apprehensions that you were talking about? Because we might be at Mass one Sunday, and a person that no one is aware of, or most people are not aware of, that is undocumented, and has perhaps a criminal record, and that happens. How would you deal with that? Or how would you like our communities to deal with that?
Well, my understanding is they won't just go to, for example, St. Timothy's Church. Let's go knock on the door of St. Timothy's and start asking around who's got AD, who doesn't. That is not what my understanding of their rules of engagement are. Now, if they've got information that this particular suspect, they have looked for him at his home, they've looked at him at his place of employment, they can't find him, but they know that without fail he goes to 10:30 Mass at St. Timothy's Catholic Church every Sunday, then they will absolutely go and they'll look for him. Now, if my office were to get that call, Sheriff, we need a deputy to assist us in going and getting this person from St. Timothy's Church, he's there at 10:30 every Sunday morning. One of the things my deputy will say, okay, can I see the warrant? And if they do have a warrant signed by a judge, then my deputy will then indeed assist with that person. Now, we're gonna try to get that person without disrupting things, right? We're not gonna go into the church and, all right, everybody freeze, everybody on the ground. Our hope would be to catch that guy either before he goes into the church, do it quietly, or wait for him to leave church. Put people at all the exits and wait for that guy to leave, and then when that guy leaves, let's try to get him away from the church again in hopes of avoiding a dangerous situation around all these peaceful churchgoers that have nothing to do with the situation. That is how we would handle it if we were asked to assist with targeted enforcement.
Thank you for that clarification and explanation. Archbishop, you are going to say something.
No, listening, I'm thinking we are for the respect of every human person and to promote safety and other values proper to our city of San Antonio and our communities. What about in those communities? They don't resonate with what we are saying. They don't believe in what we are saying because they think differently. How we are going to continue promoting human dignity and safety in our society? How do you see it? Because not everyone will agree with our expressions today. And we want safety for everybody.
Sure. Well, and it is unfortunate that not everybody feels that way. Now, with that being said, I was somewhat comforted in the fact that at the first conference that I went to was the Major County Sheriffs of America. So all the large sheriff's officers from across the country, all the sheriffs got together there. And there's some that, again, not to get too political, I'm a member of the Democrat Party, right? Everybody knows that. But there were also sheriffs from major counties that are from the Republican Party that were there. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, to hear the number of Republican sheriffs from across this country, from large counties, that feel the same way I do. Immigration is not our priority. Let's protect the entire community, regardless of immigration status. And obviously hold if anybody is actually absolutely a criminal, then yes, we want to go arrest that person. And I think everybody's in agreement with that. Nobody wants criminals walking around our streets. But again, I was pleasantly surprised to hear that folks from both sides of the aisle thought and acted just like me. And so I think that the disconnect and those that feel drastically different from us here up on the stage, I think it's a small number, relatively small number. I think you'd be surprised how many people actually agree with us up here. Unfortunately, though, because of social media, because of some of the media outlets that are out there, national media outlets, present company excluded, of course, I think that those that don't feel the way we do right now get the media attention and they're able to speak louder. But I think there are fewer of them than we're led to believe.
Mayor.
It's such an interesting question that you're asking, Archbishop, and I'm trying to, at risk of thinking out loud, to answer it. But I honestly, I have not encountered anyone who would disagree with the statement that everyone in our community deserves to be treated with dignity. I really haven't encountered anyone. Where we get into differences is how, when we talk about immigration, is whether or not people perceive that someone has committed a crime, breaking the immigration law, crossing the border illegally. And that's where I think it's so vitally important that we have open, honest conversations and educate our communities about what that means. I have so many conversations with people, very well-informed people, who still don't believe me when I say that everyone we have handled at the Migrant Resource Center was here because of the law that has established a process for when you cross the border, regardless of whether it's at a checkpoint or not, when you cross the border in this country and you claim asylum, there's a legal process to go through. And therefore you are granted status that allows you to go through that process That's who we have been helping here. And so if you disagree that law should apply to people when they cross, whether it's between a checkpoint or something like that, they don't go through some process that you think would be a better process, that's why we have to change the laws. But until that happens, those are the laws that we are dealing with, and those aren't the kinds of laws that the city or the county have the authority to change. Now, with respect to then, does everyone here who is here be deserving of basic dignity? I say yes. Most people would say yes. If we can agree on the fact that there are these weird laws that haven't changed, which is why a lot of folks have arrived, then we can get down into the basics. We treat people with dignity with respect to the law because that is what the law requires. If you are here under legal auspices in the United States, you are granted constitutional rights for due process. So before you can be removed, you have to go through that process. And that's all that we're talking about, is that we're going to continue to follow that law until it's changed. And we're going to protect people's public safety. And again, I haven't encountered anyone, if we can agree on those two things, that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. So it's a hard question to answer, because here in San Antonio, if we can agree on the facts, and we really need to get better at identifying what those facts are, there shouldn't be any disagreement about your question.
And what about if you know that in a factory, in a business, they are dismissing people because of the fear. What would be the alternatives of your law enforcement and your guidance as our mayor?
Well, again, I would suggest to people, number one, laws don't change until Congress actually does that. And so the reality of what has happened so far is the same. The rhetoric is different, but the actions are the same. People still have the rights, and we still have the obligations of public safety, so those things have not changed. We have always honored detainer requests that ICE come in. I agree. ICE wants to remove violent criminals. We want to remove violent criminals from our streets if they're here as citizens. ICE wants to remove them if they're not citizens, if they're here illegally. We're going to do that because we don't want violent people walking the streets. But as it relates to people being in fear of working in this country because they don't have the proper documentation, this is where we need people of good faith and honesty to stand up and say, and demand to our elected officials, they need to change these laws. The reality is a lot of folks who are here as DACA recipients, or many who are undocumented, are working in schools, going to school, working and paying taxes in our community, fighting in the military. These folks are here trying to contribute, yet our laws make it such that they fear being removed because we haven't allowed them to do that in a legal process. I don't think anyone would agree that the Marine down the street who has put his life on the line as a DACA recipient, fighting on the front lines in our wars on behalf of our country, should be removed. But that's the reality, is because we haven't done a better job of making sure that we can remove people who we don't want here, who are going to be a danger to our community, and keep the vast, vast majority of folks who want to contribute. Our laws need to change, and we need to demand our elected officials, i.e. Congress, do that.
Thank you very much. We're getting kind of close to closing time, at least to wrapping up time. A couple of things before we conclude. One, can you, each one of you, if you can, please, can you tell this audience, which is primarily religious sisters, priests, deacons, committed lay leaders, pastoral leaders, can Can you tell us one thing as a piece of advice during this time? I don't have to say you begin somewhere, but I'll give you a minute or two to think about it. Just a few seconds to think. One thing that you want to tell these ministers to do or not to do, or some advice. Go ahead.
I'll start, if that's okay. Please, and that's why I was glad to hear who this audience was as we were standing out. Is my hope is that you all will amplify our message throughout the community. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from here, is that local law enforcement here in Bexar County is not a threat to our immigrant community. We are not a threat to our immigrant community. We're here to protect and serve everyone in the community, regardless of documentation or lack thereof. And so please, if you do catch wind that somebody is being victimized, please urge them to call us and report that crime.
Thank you. Someone else?
Actually, a couple of things, but I was thinking about the last 10 years here, because we're talking about now. This has been happening for a long time. I was thinking about years ago, at Fremont Coliseum, we have 2,000 children, and people ask us to go and help these children and provide them with so many things. And one of the saddest days of my life is when I found a dead body. When you remember the trailer where 54 people died. And I remember that night I was going with Archbishop in the hospital praying for the families, and Archbishop, of course, is praying for them, and one person opened the eyes, couldn't speak. This is nothing new. And again, it's 10 years of memories and horrible things to some degree, but the advice, this is not advice, but I just want to tell people, we're here for everybody. And when I say we, I mean we, not just 5 of us, but all of us. And when we were there with the children, my gosh, the corporations were there, the county was there, Catholic Child was there, so many people supporting them, and I think that's what I really would like to, as all of these things going on, just to ensure that all of us are together as one to help the people who need it the most.
Well, that's Mayor, just like you're ready.
Our police chief is not here, but if he was here, he would give you the same message. Law enforcement of the city of San Antonio, SAPD, is here to protect our community. If you are a witness to a crime, if you're a victim of a crime, regardless of who you are, we want you to get in touch with us so we can protect our community. Beyond that, I would again just emphasize there are people who are responsible and have the authority to fix an immigration system that is contributing to this kind of chaos. In the meantime, don't give in to the rhetoric and fear. You live in a city that is a compassionate community that will continue to serve people in need and who will continue to watch out and work for the safety of everyone in the city.
Gloria.
After 40-some odd years in the ministry with young adults, I am more convinced now than ever before, our students are students of promise, no matter where they come from, no matter where they've been. They are here, and they're here to stay. They're here to make a difference. Help create opportunities for our students to share how they're feeling at this time in our history. Create safe spaces so that they can come to your churches and talk about their hopes and their dreams, aside from the climate of fear. Let's try to make a difference in creating a different kind of climate. It's a climate of hope. It's a year of hope.
Thank you. Archbishop, I'm going to finish with a question for you, but before that, what piece of advice would you have
For this particular audience is trust in God, because the needs are tremendous. The injustices are horrible. The hopes keep us in division. But if God is not with us, our work will not be the same. And let us let us do something about this.
Thank you. Before asking for some last words from you, Archbishop, I want to give our panel, first of all, thank you for being here with us. And any last words that you want to say?
Sure.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No.
As chaotic and crazy as the world is right now, and as divided and challenging as it is, thank God I live in the city of San Antonio.
Let's not buy into the rhetoric. Let's know our facts. And I really, really appreciate you sharing because you gave me hope. So thank you.
Twice this past summer, I was blessed to have been invited to the White House. Probably won't be getting invited back the next 4 years. I'm just guessing. I'm going on a limb here, right? But what I was most proud of is that I was invited to stand next to the president as he passed executive orders, trying to make the problem better. Not the most elegant solution, right? Because ultimately, the bipartisan legislation, it would have been great had that passed. That would have been the first meaningful change through the codes to this solution. It would have been the first solution in 28 years, something like that. But with that being said, I was pleased to be invited to be a part of the solution. And I'm always going to want to be a part of the solution, whatever that may look like. Even though I may not get invited back for the next 4 years, or I may not get invited by this administration to be a part of the solution, this being in this room with you all tonight, I consider to be part of the solution, and I'm proud to stand with each and every one of you in the community, should you need me there.
So, only one thing for me to tell you or to say is, if you know anyone, and I mean anyone, who needs help, send the person to Catholic Charities. I cannot promise you we will help the person if we cannot, but I promise you we'll try our best to help everybody.
Thank you very much. Before asking a question of you, Archbishop, I just want to remind our audience that you can always go to the Archdiocesan website to find out how to get involved and what the policy is regarding any issue, but specifically today regarding immigration issues as well. And there is also the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has a very good website where there are lots of issues that the USCCB follows as well. And I am pleased to let you know that they have updated some points regarding immigration and regarding also what the USCCB, the bishops of the United States, call for comprehensive immigration reform and what that means. So I encourage you to go to the usccb.org/migration policy to make sure that you can actually say what Catholics of the United States stand by regarding immigration. And Archbishop, my last question to you. What is your hope for immigration reform moving forward?
Glad you're asking a clergy member, not
For those of us who have worked on this issue for decades.
Immigration reform will take place if those who have the power and represent us, they have the will to change. A conversion takes place in their minds and in their hearts, and they place themselves to serve and not to be served.
Thank you. To finish, just know that as we end, some of the panelists will also be with some other media as well, answering some other questions. in interviews, but the Archbishop has a little prayer as well that we all are going to pray. I think you all
So
have it in
what about
your
we
seats.
stand? We have been sitting for a while and we can end with this prayer. As you know, there are conversations in panels or dialogues already taking place at different levels, different groups here in San Antonio. Let's continue fostering those dialogues and those encounters. Let's pray. Loving and merciful God, we thank you for this sacred time of reflection and dialogue. You have called us to walk in justice, to care for the stranger, and to build a world rooted in love and dignity. From the beginning of time, you have walked with your people, guiding them through the wilderness, providing for them in times of need, and calling them to trust in your divine providence. You were with the Israelites as they journeyed from slavery to freedom, and today you walk alongside migrants and refugees, leading their homelands in search of safety, dignity, and hope. We ask you to open our hearts to this sacred call of accompaniment. May we see in the faces of migrants and refugees the image of your Son, Jesus Christ, who himself was a migrant, seeking refuge from danger. May we not turn away in fear or indifference, but instead embrace our role as your hands and feet in the world. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, who was once a migrant among us. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. May God bless you all and our archdiocese and our communities. And Archbishop, I just wanted to say one other thing. When you mentioned what we can do, the scripture is clear about how we are to treat migrants. And that is what we have to share with people, is to educate them that the Bible in Matthew 25:35 tells us that if I was a stranger and you welcome me. From the Old Testament to Christ's teachings, we see a consistent message. God calls us to welcome, protect, and stand in solidarity with the migrant, the refugee, and the stranger. Let us not forget that the Holy Family themselves were migrants who were forced to migrate. Their story isn't just a story. It is our model for how we are called to respond, and that is what we have to share, and that is what we have to do. Thank you.